can answer the question, Judge. You can't handle the truth.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Welcome to After Hours AM, The Criminal Code, with your hosts, Joel Sturgis, Eric Olsen, and Dr. Clarissa Cole.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of After Hours AM, The Criminal Code. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
Oh, how you guys doing this fine evening?
I am fine, thank you. We had a fine, clear day, but it was back to being cold. We were back to the 40s after we had a couple days. Very pleasant, bumping up against 70. You know, you get used to it real quick.
Yeah.
And now it's cold again.
Well, you guess what? Guess what? I have to stop you right there. We have a foot of snow rolling in, or 18 inches almost of snow rolling in, with 50-mile-an-hour winds tonight.
That just seems dumb.
It does. I had to stop you, and you and you're gloating at 70. Damn you, Eric! Damn you!
I wasn't gloating because it's gone.
Well,
but we are
at
only
least you
in the 40s,
experienced it.
and it's clear.
Oh, you know.
But what all of this weather news reminds us is April is indeed the cruelest month.
It is. It is. It is definitely a fickle mistress, is what she is. Fickle.
Mercurial as a mofo.
Dr. Cole, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good, as we rant about the weather. Anything new and exciting in California?
Not really. No, I mean, the weather here is always kind of mercurial.
Yeah.
So I'm used to it being like that, especially this time of year. April, May is similar out here.
Wow. Well, tomorrow night we got a big show on tap. I want promo this right. We have Amy Allen from the Dead Pals coming back on. And guess what, Dr. Cole? It turns out she's a giant true crime fan.
That doesn't surprise me. I believe that. Of course. Of course she would be.
Yeah.
Because half of every one of their shows is true crime.
Pretty much.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
but
very cool.
So that's on tomorrow night. We're going to have her on, and we're going to talk all things dead crime. Oh, that would be a great name for a show, wouldn't it? Dead crime. The criminals are dead now, but we're going to talk to them anyway. No, dead files.
This crime is dead. That is very cool. I like her a lot, actually. She has my eyes, kind of. It's weird.
Yeah.
Same color eyes and stuff. Yeah, I like her a lot. I think she's very, like, as far as that sort of thing goes, I find her to be very credible, which, as you know, I'm like the biggest skeptic.
I know you are. So. You're a horrible skeptic when it comes to that stuff.
I am.
But that's okay.
I like her.
That's okay.
I like her and her partner, whoever the partner is. I can't remember his name.
Steve
Thank you. I like him too.
He's very cool. He's a cool cat right there. So that's tomorrow night on After Hours AM. So you go on, tune in. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. Turn in for that one. Bring the kids, bring grandma. It'll be a great time. All right. Moving along. We're here to talk about true crime, unless Eric has something else he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about false crime.
Okay, let's do that.
Yes, actually we can. We can talk about false crime. I want to bring this up, even though I didn't include it with the news stories this week, because I find it to be really entertaining. So, do you remember the whole college admission scandal, right?
I do.
With Lori Loughlin.
Just last week, yeah.
Yeah, we just brought it up last week that they were going to court or whatnot. She was like signing autographs outside of court. So both Lori Loughlin and her husband, Massimo Giannulli, went to court, and pretty much almost everybody else that was charged, including Felicity Huffman, right, pled guilty. Because, you just do, because my God,
you're
there's
caught.
emails, there's there's money. I mean, give me a break. Everybody knows you did it, right? So like you don't have many options.
Yeah.
So most of them pled guilty and threw themselves on the mercy of the court, including Felicity Huffman, who had a statement that was very contrite and sounded quite believable. So my guess is that she won't do any prison time at all. I would be surprised.
Why did they do it? I mean, what would her statement say? Yeah, we're rich, we're famous. Screw you all.
No. She said that she was, embarrassed and ashamed by her actions, and she just kind of wanted to give her daughter, and her daughter apparently knew nothing about it. She wanted to give her sort of a leg up, help her get into a good school. And honestly, that there are a lot of parents that if they had the money and influence would do the same thing.
But it's still a crime.
Of course it is. No, of course it is. But that's what she was saying. She said, I know it's a crime. I know it was wrong. I'm very sorry. I'm ashamed. And it was just, terrible what I did. So that's basically what she did. And most of the other people did the same.
One more thing we should add, which is very relevant, that she said. She said, I let my daughter down.
Yes.
So I think that was really a key part of this, because it wasn't just to her machinations and throwing some money around. In her case, it was a lot less money. And I think that's part of why she's getting off a lot more easily. And I agree with you. I think the max they were talking is maybe 4 months, and I don't think she'll do any at all. But, man, they are throwing the book, which is what you're going to tell us, at Lori, who was taking things much more lightly, and she was rather flippant about
extremely flippant. Yeah, very, she was just very cavalier about the whole thing. And by the way, Felicity Huffman could do up to 4 years.
Well, she should do.
It's no, I mean, I'm just saying it's not just a few months. It's several years that she could do potentially. So it's out there that she could actually do some real prison time. But Lori Loughlin and her husband, who paid $500,000 as opposed to Felicity Huffman's $15,000, and have not apologized, decided not to plead guilty. And so then, immediately after that, the prosecutors decided to indict them for money laundering.
Oh, no, they got the mob charge.
Well, and they had to, you had to know that it was going to be kind of like a RICO beef. You had to know that was going to happen, because you don't just give the money to somebody outright. Right?
RICO suave.
You put it through a charitable foundation, which is money laundering. That's what the definition of money laundering pretty much is. That I knew that they were guilty of doing these things. I mean, all of them were, right? But the prosecutor was going to bring those really harsh charges because just plead guilty, get it over with. But she didn't. She and her husband didn't. They rolled the dice, and they lost, people, because that is punishable by up to 20 years for each charge.
So did their demeanor change immediately once that came down the pipe, that they were looking at the money laundering angle?
No, Eric, have you seen them after? I didn't.
They have not been back yet.
Oh, they probably went on vacation. Yep.
What I read today is, I think it's as soon as tomorrow. I thought it was, because I think I might have read the same thing you did. This was just today, with all the main points, and the 20 years per charge. That will to make someone sit up and take notice. I think they have to appear tomorrow.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, I would love to see what their demeanor is. And honestly, they better look drawn, like they haven't slept, like they just look awful. They better be very contrite. No autographs, by the way. That is just in bad taste in any circumstance. I don't care if it was for something you consider to be paltry. Don't sign autographs when you're going to court. It is in such bad taste, I can't even tell you. If I was a jury member, I would want to throw the book at you for that. And for
yeah. Well, what do you get when you look at this Lori Loughlin? Does she look like a real piece of work?
She looks like Aunt Becky.
No, but I'm saying
she's a therapist in prison.
She doesn't look like she really cares, or she looks like, hey, I can beat this because I have money.
That's what I'm saying. I'd love to have her in a therapy group in prison. She'd be set straight by the other prisoners really, really fast. And I would love to see that.
I would imagine.
She's not above the law.
Dr. Cole, I would imagine you've seen rich people go to jail before.
Yes, and more prominent than her, too, if she thinks she's like the best thing they've ever seen. No, I've seen famous rock stars. I have seen people that are very prominent surgeons that have multiple residences in multiple countries. I've seen people that are far more both wealthy and famous than she is in prison. And let me tell you, it's a really equalizing sort of place to be.
Well, sure. It's where you realize that, hey, I am not anyone special, and I'm still wearing this jumpsuit.
Yeah, you're still wearing the same jumpsuit. You're still being, and that's another thing. You're not getting a single cell. You're not getting special meals. You're not getting special visits. You are just a number there, and you're just like everybody else. And maybe, honestly, maybe that's what she and her husband need to wake up. Because God knows how many other laws they're breaking.
Do you think that they would deport him?
Well, I don't know what his citizenship status is. I don't know, is he like a dual citizen? Has he always been? Has he been for a long time?
Yeah. But let's assume.
If he was born over there and gained citizenship here, speaking for, state of California, yeah, they would.
Okay. That's what I was asking. I mean, I do believe he was born there and came here, from what I understand.
Yes.
So
yes, they would. We do. That's the policy. If you break a big law, felon, if you're a felon in California, typically you are deported, yes.
Okay, good to know. Yeah. Wow, what do you think's going to happen, Dr. Cole? What do you think will be the outcome? Prediction.
Oh, I think unfortunately, what do I want to happen? I want them to do prison time, both of them. I do. And I want them to do it at the same time. I don't want the judge giving them any sort of deal that says, well, like they did with the Real Housewives, where one of you can do prison while the other one stays out, and then the other one can do prison time while the other one is out. You know what I mean? Like sort of trade places. You can keep your house running and all that. And no, screw that, man. You think the regular detainee gets that privilege? No. I hope they both go to prison at the same time, and nobody knows what to do with anything. That's what I hope.
And maybe
that's not what's going to happen.
And maybe prison won't be so charitable to them.
I guarantee. I know what the prisons are like here, and believe me, they're going to pretend like they don't even know who they are.
Good deal.
I promise you.
Well, that's how it should be. That's justice is blind.
They'll probably get less than treatment, to be quite honest, because once people find out who they are, they're going to be ticked. Because you know what? These officers, they work double, triple shifts to send their kids to mediocre colleges.
Sure.
They don't generally like people that do the things that Loughlin and her husband.
Good to know.
Yeah, good luck with that. Not really. I really hope they do time. But they probably won't. They'll probably come back to court and
or they're going to say,
let me plead guilty now.
Or they're going to say to the judge, "What's your favorite charity?"
I swear, I know they'll get out of it somehow, but I would love to see them both do a few years.
Vince Neil murdered somebody. He only did 30 days.
I know. That's what it's like for celebrity. I wish we could try him in Wyoming and see what happens. Anyway, moving on. There's a story that is kind of embarrassing, but I like it because I can honestly see something like that potentially happening to me if I lived alone. So this concerns a woman in Oregon. Okay.
All right.
And she woke up at 1:40 something she heard something in her house. That's what it was in the afternoon, but she heard something in her bathroom, something banging around in there.
Okay.
And she was home alone, or so she thought. So she called 911. And the sheriff's office, the Washington County Sheriff's Office, responded and surrounded the home because there's somebody in there, right? I mean, that's a big deal. The officers went so far as to request a canine to help them at the scene, and they reported hearing noises also coming from her bathroom. So basically, there's officers standing outside her bathroom now, giving several announcements, commanding whoever it was to leave the bathroom. And they had their guns drawn. And they opened their door. And do you know who was inside?
Who?
Roomba.
Roomba was trapped in there? Come out with your robotic hands up. You're surrounded.
They breached the bathroom door and encountered a very thorough vacuuming job being done.
Wow.
Over. And over.
Yeah. Bang into the same door. I bet she felt awfully dumb.
I can't even imagine how I would feel after that. Dumb isn't even I could be having like a literal stroke the next day and not call anyone. I would be so embarrassed. It was a Roomba, so everything was fine.
Wow. So they had to do property damage to find out it was her robotic vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, I am a little confused though, because I don't have one, so don't they make more noise than just the banging
I
around?
would have thought so, or what? I thought the cops use snake cams. You see on TV where they shove a snake cam under there and see what the heck's going on.
I think that's more like if the perpetrator doesn't know that the cops are there and they're kind of surreptitiously doing it. But if somebody's banging around in there and you're yelling at them, you know.
Put the vacuum down and come out. Yeah.
Stop vacuuming.
I believe they make a soft purring noise.
They do. Okay.
Much like a cat is what
because
you're saying.
it is literally, it's vacuuming. So, you're going to have the movement of air. I don't think it's loud. It's
not loud.
But it's not nothing either.
Interesting.
Gotcha. I do not own one either. So.
No, I think I would love one, but my dogs would too, and that's essentially the problem.
Yeah, my kids would love them, I'm sure. They'd have all sorts of fun at Roomba.
Yeah, my dogs would attack it just nonstop. It would just be
all day.
A bark fest. Yeah.
It'd be all day, especially if you aren't home. Whoa, stuff would get real.
God. Yeah, like the doorbell and vacuum cleaners. Watch out.
Oh, yeah. All you have to do is, if I want to mess with my dogs, just look at the door and say, hey, come in. And they're going nuts.
I was going to say, like, my house is not very amenable to, like, burglars or really anybody coming by. It just isn't. They freak out.
They get barked
by
at,
dogs.
yes.
It's bark fest. So
that's why you have them, though. That's why you have them.
Well, I have them because I love them and they're fluffy. But that part's good, too.
You know. Well, that's a strange tale of misadventures and house cleaning.
Yes, and this next, I actually had wanted to get to this one last week, and I had forgotten about the story. It's not funny at all. It's really tragic, but I wanted to put it out there as sort of a public service announcement to people because I know a lot of people use Uber and Lyft, right?
Sure.
So there was a South Carolina student. She was 21 years old, named Samantha Josephson. She went out like people do on a Friday, was drinking, having fun with her friends. She calls an Uber, and she's waiting outside for the Uber, as people do. And this car stops, picks her up. A 24-year-old man named Rowland was inside, and he killed her rather gruesomely, I have heard.
Oh.
Yeah, they still have not released some of the details of the attack. That's how bad it was. And it turns out that he wasn't the Uber.
Well, I would imagine, never get return rides, return fares if you did that kind of thing.
Yeah, funny. So basically she called an Uber, and then the guy saw somebody standing outside looking as though they were waiting for one and decided to take that moment to pick up.
So he knew what, okay, gotcha. It wasn't her just stumbling to the car and he's like, I got this woman in my car. I'm being a killer and being a horrible person. But he looked for that look, like they were waiting for an Uber.
Well, I'm sure he did. I mean, it sounds like somebody that was just a predator sort of in wait, and he took it. He wasn't out cruising for that, but I think he saw it and took his opportunity. I mean, when somebody, and I've seen it a million times, like when I'm in the city, like somebody standing outside with a phone, sort of looking at the phone and then looking at your car, you can tell that they're waiting for an Uber or a Lyft. It would be really easy to just pull over and go, hey, hop in, and have them think that. So I kind of wanted to cover this story because her dad now is sort of going out and doing this, and I felt like we could do our part too to sort of just put the word out there. Not that just because somebody is an Uber or Lyft driver means that they're super trustworthy, but it usually means that they've had a background check at the very least. And if you're waiting for an Uber or a Lyft, there's lots of things that you can do to make sure that that is who they say they are. So have you guys taken Uber and Lyft before?
Never. Not me anyway.
Yes, I have.
And so what can you do to sort of, tell that it's the person that you called?
Well, you ask them to say who you are. Mm-hmm. Tell me my name. You must know my name. I've never done it by myself, so that's another thing. I mean, I've always been in groups of as the fewest is that I can think of is, I guess, 2, but as many as like 6. And so, you're reasonably well protected if you have more than one person, or at least makes a huge difference, I would think. But the main thing would be if they know your name, then my goodness, how else would they know it? I mean, that's the main thing. And you ask their name, you're supposed to know their name too. Identify yourself if you have any concerns. I would if I was by myself. Absolutely. If I were by myself, I would take more precautions, and certainly after this, because this was a huge story, and it's so tragic, and it's obviously it's ironic, and it's such a tale of the age, but it's a horrible tale, and the same rules would apply to any circumstance where you're waiting for someone who you don't know on site. Whatever those circumstances may be. It could be any kind of a meeting, I guess, if you're meeting someone somewhere for, some sort of appointment. Do take a moment to make sure that person is who you think they are and who they say they are. It's okay to be a little bit paranoid. Just don't go around being really paranoid, because then you're my brother. Oops, I didn't say that.
Yeah, don't be overly paranoid, but like also on the Uber app, and I can't remember if Lyft is the same, but they give you your driver's name. There is a picture of your driver, and they tell you the make, model, year, and license plate number of who's coming to pick you up.
Well, that's all good information
you
need.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's all on the Uber app, and I am always amazed at how many people don't look at it. I have been with people where an Uber has been ordered either by myself or the other person, and I can, maybe I'm seeing their phone, and a car starts to slow down, and they go, "Oh, that must be the Uber," and I'm like, "No, we're waiting for a Ford Taurus. That's not it."
Yeah.
So it just make sure that you are paying attention. I mean, yes, the name, like Eric, I think that's totally enough. Do they know your name? You should know theirs. But the other thing that you should watch out for is if somebody is with the Uber app, you're looking for the car. I'm always looking for the license plate number, because there's a million cars that look alike. Looking for the license plate number, that's the car. Make sure that the picture of the driver matches the person that's in the seat, because a lot of times people will sort of, loan out their Uber account to people that don't qualify for criminal reasons.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So make sure that your driver matches the photo, because he'll know the name of whoever the driver is, because he's borrowing the car. Make sure they match the photo, and make sure the car matches.
Good advice. Can never be too safe out there and about, out and about. I always bring my own vehicle, so generally I'm just kind of that way. I don't like to take cabs if I don't have to, so I just drive my own thing.
Yeah, but if you're drinking, you can't do that safely. So
that's why I bring.
And
a
if
friend. That's why I bring a friend if I do drink, that's sober.
Well, and if you're in the city though too, there's no. I mean, like San Francisco, there's no place to park anyway.
Yep.
Everybody takes
transit. I'm from a small town, so
Yeah, no, I'm in a place too where everybody drives, but I've been to the city enough. I've lived in cities enough. Everybody takes Uber and Lyft. Just make sure you do your due diligence. It only takes a second to go, okay, that's the license plate. Look at the picture and look at the person. It just takes a second, and it's well worth it.
All right. Well, that's all good advice. So
it was such a tragic story. It kind of hit me because, it's dangerous. It's dangerous for women alone in general. And to think that she just mistakenly got into somebody's car because they stopped, and there's so many things built into the app for safety, like the license plate number, like the picture.
It's a truly tragic set of circumstances.
Yeah. All you got to do is pay attention. So, all right. Okay. Oh, this is another interesting story that is interesting, creepy. Have you guys talked about Airbnb and their policies yet?
We have in the past. We have talked about some of the shenanigans that have gone on inside of Airbnb, such as cameras and things such as that.
Yeah, why is that not? I know why it's not illegal, but the story is kind of funny. So on April Fool's Day, a family from New Zealand was staying at an Airbnb, and they were on the property with their kids, and Andrew decided to sync his phone with the property's Wi-Fi. And when he went into his settings, he noticed that there was an unknown device on the network. And just for kicks, he connected to it. And then he saw pictures of himself live streaming.
No.
How fun.
That would be a very disconcerting feeling.
It would. I have much more of a sense of humor about that sort of thing. Oh, goodness gracious, would I be thinking of things I could, fool the camera with?
Sure.
Like setting up some sort of heist movie and playing that in front of the cameras. Anything. Because I'm like that. But yeah, he complained to Airbnb, and it's not illegal.
It's not illegal to have a camera on the Airbnb?
Just be aware of that. No, it is not. It is against Airbnb's policies to have cameras in bathrooms or bedrooms, but it is not illegal, and it's not because it's not illegal to have cameras inside your own home.
No, it's not.
And that's what an Airbnb is.
That's true, and especially if it's in common areas.
Exactly. So now Airbnb, I guess, has a policy that says if you're going to be an Airbnb host, you must disclose where your cameras are. If you have cameras in your home, you must disclose. That's what they're saying now. Airbnb is saying that, but it is not illegal.
That's good policy.
It's not going to be illegal. Yeah, and it's not going to be illegal. I mean, people are saying, "Oh, it should be illegal." It can't be. It's inside a person's private home. If they make it illegal, that means that they have to register as basically a B&B, which would mean that people couldn't do it because it's either a commercial property or residential property. It's all about the law, so they can't do it. But just so you know, if you're staying in an Airbnb, someone may be watching.
Good to know. Look up for cameras. Get a bug detector.
Does that work?
Yeah, it does. RF detector. Yep.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. Ask the Chinese woman at Largo. She knows.
Can't you just get like a signal blocker?
No,
or something?
well, you could, but I like a bug detector.
Huh.
Because it detects RF.
Interesting.
Just turn it on, wave it around. Light turns red.
We have stayed at Airbnbs, and we will be staying at some when we take our trip out west in June for my mother's final service. And I'm going to keep this in mind, and I'm going to remind the family that we need to keep our eyes open for such things.
Sure. Keep an extra eye out for the eye that might be watching you.
Exactly. And speaking of like strange things on the webs and whatnot, this story gets me in a very strange place. It just makes me irrationally angry. So I may need you guys to take over for me. Apparently, no, seriously.
As you foam in the mouth and short out your mic.
I am so upset about it. Apparently, there are these blogs, like these Tumblr type blogs for the quote shoplifting community.
Oh, I had no idea the shoplifters had their own little community on Tumblr.
I didn't.
Do they
either.
have a clubhouse?
Well, Princess Klepto, and her, that's literally her handle, Princess Klepto, Unicorn Lifter's Life. They blog about their thievery, posting photos of stolen merchandise and keeping a running tally of how much they've, quote, saved.
Wow. Man.
Yeah.
Raising the prices for the rest of us.
Yeah, it's really about sharing experiences and helping fellow lifters. I can't. It's no.
She's starting to boil over.
I can't do it.
You would think that'd fall under a crime syndicate almost, and that there would be some type of recourse open to them legally.
Conspiracy.
Tumblr.
Sure.
Like Tumblr should, I don't know, reinforce that they don't want to be a party to a criminal conduct. That would probably be the first place to start if I was that company, because, if they allow it to happen, at some point they will be considered complicit.
Yeah, I would think so too. And it's not just about talking about sort of conspiracy. People be like, oh, it's petty theft. It's a small amount of money, but it's not. I mean, when you add up, first of all the different people that are doing it, and then the things that stores have to do to prevent it. And to work against it. I mean, my God, the money adds up really fast when you're, cameras, personnel, taking action. Oh God, it's a nightmare. That is honestly the reason that all the costs of everything go up, especially in these box stores like Walmart, Target.
Sure.
That's why the prices are as high as they are. It's one of the biggest reasons, because what percentage of their losses each year are from shoplifting. It is
there's
extraordinary.
That's why, they also carry the insurance to cover at the end of the year, but then their insurance goes up, and then they have to cover it that way. So, it's not a victimless crime. We're all victims of it.
We are all victims of it. It's like, that's why all of us have to pay more. Like, maybe you'd be able to afford that mascara if you weren't shoplifting with all your friends. Like, it's just,
Now, does it seem to be, in this article anyway, does it seem to be more teenagers doing this kind of thing?
That's the sense,
sure does seem like a teenage crime, and that's really what the joke used to be, is the teenager stealing stuff, and that, does happen. But I would imagine there's still a fair share of adults doing it too, so...
Oh, there definitely are, but what's interesting about these kids, who they said one of them is 15, is that they think of it as activism, and it's anti-capitalist action. And I'm like, clearly they do not understand the ripple effect.
Clearly they're idiots, and their parents should have selectively bred.
That is a self-serving philosophy, I must say. It's papering over a self-serving act, a very selfish act.
That's exactly it.
With pseudo-philosophy, pseudo-activism, it's clearly nonsense.
But it's also a gateway to crime.
Well, it's not only a gateway to crime, it is crime.
It is crime, but bigger crime. I'm talking about bigger crime.
And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I guess the only solace I have with this story that makes me irrationally angry is that eventually they will, because they all do, they'll get busted, and then they might be able to link them to all of their posts on the blog, and then that will be online forever, including when future employers, my guess capitalists, might want to be hiring them. So it gives me some solace to know that I will never, ever, ever have to see them in the workplace in the future, because they won't be there, but they will be making lip gloss out of Kool-Aid and lotion.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Oh, God, Kool-Aid and lotion. Well, you know what we should add? We should have a caveat to this. I don't know what the current stats are. I can't imagine it's changed that much. Maybe it has. I don't know. Clarissa, I imagine you would have a better handle on this. But when I was a very young man, when I got married the first time in my early 20s, my wife worked in retail, and she moved up pretty quickly. She was a college graduate. She was on the professional side. And at that time, by far the biggest source of thievery and theft in these stores, and that was in the days of the big department stores, mall-based department stores. It was employees. It wasn't.
That is true. That is very true. It's usually employees. A lot of times it's employees.
Yeah, no, I know that too. I mean, they're nabbing stuff before it even goes out on the floor half the time, in the back, the warehouse, saying you got damaged or whatever. I mean, that's always going to be, I think, a problem, policing from the inside. But just sort of knowing, I guess, that there is sort of a social network supporting this idea is it's upsetting. It's just because it is teaching all these sort of antisocial values, that because you can't afford it, you still deserve it. And the corporations don't deserve to make money off of you if you can't afford it. And most of the time they're stealing luxury items on top of it. It's not like they're stealing formula for their hungry babies. They're stealing mascara. And you don't need that. Okay? Like it's just it's so
there want to be anarchist activists.
It is such a microcosm for some actually pretty intransigent societal issues, and that is the underclass, and I'm speaking very broadly, of course, but there are significant portions of the underclass who truly believe that they do deserve all the things that are shoved in their faces on TV, on the radio, on the internet, all these luxury goods. Why don't I get them? It's only because of the way I was born. It has, and where I was born, the family I was born into, the area I was born into. It is not my fault. I deserve that. So you have this very significant value that's lacking from a rather significant portion of the population that believes that the only way to get to that luxury level is either by crime or by some, extraordinary luck, success in sports, for example. And so, in other words, it's minimizing the across-the-board values of any, not just American, but any, capitalist society, that everyone does have to play by the rules, that everyone is supposed to do their best, that you're not supposed to worry about where you are in the socioeconomic structure. You're supposed to just keep striving, and you're supposed to play by the rules. But now we're in a situation with the current political oeuvre, the way we are right now, where it's a much larger than normal portion of the population that's saying, wow, we are learning how the people at the top 1% or 0.1% or 0.01%, they don't play by the rules at all. Why should we? And I think actually that's a significant portion of what underlies a certain amount of support from the working class / underclass for these 0.01 percenters at the top, because, hey, look at them. They don't play by the rules either. So that means we don't have to. So this is a really significant issue. It's a microcosm. It's it seems like a relatively small thing. But values are what society is based upon. And we do really have to play by the same rules, or the whole house of cards falls apart.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But at the same time, it's like this, again, it sort of always comes back to this idea of personal responsibility. And no, I'm not exactly sure how to teach that necessarily, especially not to the masses. But I mean, obviously, that is the prevailing thought process in prison, right? Like, people that are in prison primarily have this idea that I deserve that, even if other people have it or have worked for it. I deserve it too. I should be able to have it. So I am going to take it.
It's entitlement.
I feel like I deserve it. And it always kind of feels like you're fighting this losing battle sometimes, especially when I'm speaking to inmates, when I'm doing counseling, things like that, because they say the same thing. Look at Donald Trump, look at people in the higher, infrastructure in the prison system, look at all the corruption. And it's really hard to work against that, other than to say that if you don't have some intrinsic idea of what right and wrong is, and if it doesn't make you feel better to do right than it does to do wrong, I'm not sure what to tell you. But it should. It should make you feel better to do things for other people than it does to screw people over. But I don't know.
True. Huh.
Maybe society is just different.
I don't have the answer. I'm just saying This is a really fundamental problem. And it's one that was really it was kind of the philosophical underpinning of when Clinton, reformed welfare. It was like, we have to break this culture. And to a certain extent, I think some of that did go in the right direction. And I think some of those goals, at least temporarily, were achieved. But it's an ongoing thing. Every generation, you're going to have to break through to people who don't feel, who feel that they are where they are unfairly, through no fault of their own. So why shouldn't I get this? It's purely by chance that I was born, to this underclassed family. Why should that have happened? That's not my fault. So it's very difficult to come up with a method whereby people can agree on a common set of rules. And that's why small, homogeneous countries like, for example, Scandinavia, at least the way Scandinavia used to be, because now even they're getting immigrants and getting variations in common values. But small, very similar communities, similar base, similar values, it's much easier to do things that rely on trust. Like, let's face it, socialism. It relies on everyone to keep trying hard, even though certain things are being provided just because you are you. And that falls apart when people start trying to take advantage of the system, or at least more than a small percentage of people try to take advantage of that system. It only works if everyone keeps working and everyone shares those values. And when you have such an incredibly melting pot societies such as the U.S. or the U.K. for that matter. Many of the European countries are now melting pots, but the U.S. is the biggest of them all, of the melting pots, and the most varied of all. And so that's why it's so important that we do teach common values.
Not just like common values, but I totally agree with that. But also sort of a common sort of way of dealing with problems, and we don't see that. We don't see sort of that fairness. We were just talking about Lori Loughlin and Huffman and how they're not going to get any time probably, whereas other people would, and we're not seeing the same standard apply across the board.
I would love to see a utopia where everyone is treated the same across the board. But to be honest, money buys freedom.
It buys a lot of things, and
it can buy your freedom. Yeah. It can buy your freedom straight up.
Yes, it
so
can.
Don't even try to say no. No one, audience wise, don't even try to say that to yourself. That won't, because it will. You get a man with hundreds of millions of dollars versus a pauper. The pauper's going down way before the rich man.
Well, and that's the hardest. I think that's the hardest fight that I have when I'm doing, having that talk with, somebody who's been convicted, and they're like, well, it's not, see, that's the thing. They're like, well, I deserve that too. And basically my statement is, it's not that you don't deserve it. It's that you're not going to get it because your presumption is that the world should be fair. I don't know who told you that, but it's not. It probably never will be, and I can't make it that way. And on top of it, your criminal actions aren't helping to make it that way. If anything, you're making your life worse for yourself. You just are.
And those who you committed the crimes against.
Right, and it's not the big corporate, Sam Walton. It's all the checkers that work there and the stalkers. It's people like you, people who are even worse off than you. That's who you're making it worse for. So it's like, if you want to make the world fair, you're looking at it through a very selfish lens. I'm going to make it fair for me by stealing this product that I want. How about you make it fair by, I don't know, becoming a human rights attorney? How about you do that? Or just protesting for a cause that you believe in, or giving $5 here or there to a cause you believe in. That's a way of making the world more fair.
But not to be devil's advocate, but if all you've ever known is hopelessness, that's all you're ever going to aspire to. Because if that's all you've ever known in your life is defeat, how do you ascend to that?
Like I said, there's tons of people that come to me. They say they're hopeless, and I say, that's okay. I've got the hope right here. I'm going to hold it for you till you can come and get it.
Sure, it's a very tough call.
That's
it's a very
my job.
Tough situation.
And that's why mentors are so critical.
Exactly.
Especially in the worst environments. That's why it's so critical for people who do make it out, who do succeed, especially through more quote-unquote traditional methods, especially through methods of education, for example, versus just being great at sports or being a rapper or whatever, whatever the case may be. But through education, through bettering yourself, that route, that is attainable, and that's attainable to virtually everyone. Everyone can better themselves. Everyone can become educated. And the irony of the situation now that we're talking about is, if you are willing to work at education, the system really is set up for those at the high end and the low end. The educational system will benefit you greatly, and you won't have to pay anything. As long as you work within that system, and as long as you try and do your best, and succeed at least to a certain extent. And that's something anyone can do. But again, it's very difficult because people look around and they say one of the big contributors to one of the first big waves of this real disparity in values within, talking about America anyway, American society, was television. Because all of a sudden people were seeing these things that they'd never seen before. They knew about them. They knew rich people had stuff, but they didn't know, it's another thing to see it and to actually have it shoved in your face, or even just things, lifestyles of the middle class, to learn what the middle class had that you did not have. So that's going back to the 50s and 60s, when by the 60s, pretty much everyone had TV. And so they were exposed to all this, and they had to, absorb it and try to figure out how to get away around it. And, again, there's no easy answers. Mentoring makes a huge difference. And, just keep pushing education, because people do educate themselves out of the worst situations. For the percentages may not be great, but there is no awful situation that a person has not risen above. So you too can do it if you're willing to work hard.
Yeah, and it is about work. It's about the work that you put in. No, not work at becoming a better thief, which is what this blog is all about.
We already have politicians. They're really good at that.
Yeah,
we
don't need any more of that. Yeah, it's like if you want the world to be fair, if you want more than what your lot in life is, be willing to put in the work. And is that work going to pay off the same way as it pays off for somebody that's rich and knows someone? No, but you will have a better character. You will. You just will. And you only get one chance in life at making an impression with your character. And I think rich people are doing it in all the wrong ways. Learn from that. I mean, there's a reason that Trump is the butt of everybody's jokes, and now Lori Loughlin is as well, because they blew that shot at having a good character, which is sad.
Very true.
Very, very sad. So,
make the world a better place.
Yes.
When you leave, have a plus sign next to you. When you leave this world, have a plus sign, not a minus sign. That's really all we're talking about. Contribute more than you take.
And if you are going to take something, do not snap off a Terracotta Warrior's thumb. Especially if that Terracotta Warrior is 2,200 years old and a precious relic from another country that's communist. It's just a thought.
It is a fine suggestion.
That will not end well.
Very level-headed suggestion.
I feel like it is. Yeah, there's a guy, a person named Michael Rohana. He's 25. He was at he was a tourist. Yeah, at a museum. He was attending an ugly sweater party. At the Franklin Institute on December 21st, 2017, when he entered the Terracotta Warriors of the First Emperor exhibit. According to the arrest affidavit, He proceeded to take selfies with the 2,000-year-old statue known as the Cavalryman, and then he snapped off his left thumb and walked away.
Oh, he meant to do so. Oh, wasn't one of those, I had a couple to drink and lost my balance. Oh, I'm so sorry for breaking your statue. It'll never happen again.
This wasn't a Vince Vaughn moment. This was more like this was a theft moment. He was caught on surveillance vandalizing the life-size statue that's considered one of China's most prized archaeological discoveries.
Huh.
He said he testified in his own case, and he said on the stand, because they have video of him doing it, right? He goes, every time I see this video now, I'm trying to figure out what was going through your mind. What were you thinking? I don't know how I could have been so stupid. Well,
at least
there you
being
have
honest. Yeah,
I know. I was going to say, these are the thoughts of criminals, my friend.
Sure. At least he's being honest for a second, having a second of self-realization.
Yes, he did. So he admitted to the crime, but his lawyers argued that he wasn't charged under the correct law, and federal prosecutors said they'll decide by May whether or not they're going to retry the case. So I guess it got thrown out because he wasn't tried under the correct law. That being said, Chinese officials would like him to face, quote, severe punishment.
Oh, send him to China. I'm sure he will face all sorts of punishment there.
He won't make it to China.
No.
They'll get him on the way.
I was going to say, he can't go to China ever. Yeah. Never. The rest of his life, I guarantee you, they will keep his name. He cannot go there. If he ever thinks about
and if they invite you, you know it's not for a dinner party.
No, I mean, they might just take your thumb.
Or even an ugly sweater party.
Yeah. Let's just, I would assume you would not be coming back from that trip.
I would assume you wouldn't either. I mean, when they say they are like one of their most, if not the most prized archaeological find, they mean that. They're that important. Like, you don't, oh God, I wouldn't have even taken a selfie with the thing because I would have worried, like, if there was an accidental flash or something, if it would have done damage. Like, I don't care if it was an ugly sweater party. I would have been paranoid.
Sure. I would too. I would as well. I would kept the hands off the exhibits. It probably says it everywhere. Do not touch the exhibits.
I'm sure it did. Yeah. No, I just thought it was funny to see his thoughts where he's watching himself thinking, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking?
Some people's children. Some people's children.
I'm like, oh God, it couldn't be more honest. So there you go. But they have a lot of those warriors. So if one is missing his thumb, I think,
It's a battle wound. Just tell them it's a battle wound.
I wonder why they haven't reattached it. They said they sent it back to China, but it has not been reattached.
They're holding it as a statement.
It's evidence. It's evidence.
Right?
American stupidity is probably what they're telling each other.
Yeah, like when they finally get to the guy, they'll just take his thumb off and attach it to the statue.
Yep. It'll be a donated graft of his own thumb.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to know why they haven't put it back, but all sorts of bad.
Memory is long in China.
Yeah.
Yes,
your
it is.
descendants better not go there either. Yeah. And this is a strange story that I wanted to cover. It is there's a California victim, but it's not a Californian crime. So there is a child psychiatrist that was found slain in the trunk of a model, a self-professed Playboy model that apparently murdered him.
Oh my God.
I never trusted the Playboy models that I went out with.
No.
Well,
Everybody
I don't know
knows.
that. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that she is, because they say she's a self-described Playboy model, which basically means she's not, right? I mean,
yeah, she's 25.
You can fact
I'm a Playboy model.
Yeah, maybe she's doing that whole you think it, you pretend to be it, and eventually you will be it. Maybe that's what she's thinking.
Visualize.
But they don't have nude women in Playboy anymore. They haven't now for a few years.
Well, I don't know that she's nude. I mean, the picture that I'm seeing, she's clothed.
I'm saying, a Playboy model. I mean, I don't even think they have models anymore, unless I'm mistaken. I thought they got away from all of that. Huh.
No, they still do.
Okay.
They're still doing the whole thing. They're doing like plus size models and everything now. Anyway, she's a 25-year-old self-described Playboy model, and the arrest warrant indicates that a 71-year-old named Thomas Burchard, Dr. Thomas Burchard, was paying her rent in her Las Vegas apartment. And he was found dead in the trunk of a blue Mercedes-Benz near the entrance of the Lake Merced National Recreational Area. And the weirdest, I mean, there's a lot of weird parts going on here, but Burchard's longtime girlfriend, and I'm like, wait, what? Judy Earp, said she thought her boyfriend may have given this woman about $300,000 over the years because he was just he was overly compassionate, she said.
Wow, he makes a lot of money, too, that child psychiatrist.
Got some bucks laying
Yeah,
around.
right?
Do you know how much money you don't even want to know. They make that. Yeah, that's nothing for him.
Wow.
He's fine. Child psychiatrists make a lot of money.
Huh.
A lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
But the weirdest part
knew?
to me is that God, psychiatrists in general make a lot of money, but child psychiatrists?
Yeah. How about forensic psychologists? They raking it in?
No, psychiatrists, psychologists. It's a totally different profession.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yes.
We are not, just for the record. And I work for the state. You really think I'm making
I'm just asking.
It's all about the drugs.
Yeah.
It is all about the drugs. But the girlfriend is saying that he was, quote, overly compassionate and that he'd given a lot of money to about half a dozen women in the past 17 years.
I'm sure he had. I'm sure he paid the rent. I'm sure that they were all very close.
Yeah, so I don't know if my boyfriend were doing that I would be describing him as overly compassionate. I don't think those are the words I'd be using.
Well, yeah, maybe he's a philanthropist. I can talk tonight. Sorry,
philanthropist.
Yes, my nose is a little plugged, so
Yeah.
sorry about that. Couldn't get the word out, but maybe he's just charitable. Maybe he's just giving to wayward women.
Half a dozen of them.
Well, it's an important job.
71 years old that are Playboy,
Well,
and he's just a philanthropist with self-described Playboy
Somebody
models.
has to. Well, hey,
single
save
mother.
the models. Haven't you seen the website? Save the models. Maybe he's there just trying to save the models, Clarissa. Maybe.
No,
I don't want to blame the victim.
I know, right? It's like, I'm not trying to blame the victim here, but come on, people. Overly compassionate.
Hey.
He was just an overly compassionate person.
Well, maybe he was. But then again, my radar's saying no, but,
Yeah, everything in me is saying that's ridiculous. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
So wait a minute. Now you're making me think, which hurts my head. All right. So why would he waste so much money? Are we saying it's more like kind of a prostitution situation?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Give that man a ham.
Absolutely.
A call girl situation.
Yeah.
A woman of
Why
loose morals.
would he waste that kind of money? You don't have to spend that kind of money on such things.
How would you know?
If you want like a kept woman though, and I'm guessing that somebody who is an MD, specifically a psychiatrist, might want to think that the person that they're paying for is kind of just theirs.
Oh, they own them.
I can absolutely see that. Yeah, like I don't want to hire a prostitute that's dirty, but I will help her
complex
pay bills.
kicks in.
Yeah.
Yes, gotcha.
Exactly. Like she's mine. If I pay this much money for her, she should be at my beck and call. She should do whatever I want her to do, no questions asked, and which is typically what it is. That's the deal with kept women is like you jump, they say how high. It's not like, because prostitutes can say no, I don't do that, or no, I'm not free on Friday, or screw you, old man. Prostitutes can say all of that, whereas a kept woman is expected to have.
Well, that is true. There's certain perks to a kept woman. Then is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
For the
exactly
men,
right.
For the men, there's certain perks.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, there's perks for her too. She gets $300,000 of pretty much free money, and she just has to see him every now and then.
Maybe he missed a payment.
Or maybe he asked her to do something she didn't want to do. I don't know.
Could be. You just never know. We'll have to see what comes out of this.
But I doubt that he was giving that money because he was just overly compassionate. That's kind of really silly.
Save the models. Save the models.
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely want to follow this story because I guarantee you that a bunch of stuff is going to come out in the wash on this one. And can you imagine seeing this? This is, by the way, this is on the People website that I found this story. Can you imagine being on the People, like just People's webpage, just for kicks at work, and you have a kid that you've been taken to this psychiatrist, and you're like, wait a minute.
He reads about him in the waiting room.
Wait, what's going on? Isn't that Timmy's doctor?
Was his doctor. Was.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. It's just embarrassing on a number of levels. So anyway, I'm going to follow that. And Joel, do you want to get to your Florida story?
The man threatened to destroy a town with an army of turtles?
Yeah.
Yeah, a self-proclaimed saint was arrested in coastal Florida town Sunday after screaming obscenities and threatening to unleash an army of turtles. That's right, folks, an army of turtles. In an arrest affidavit reportedly said authorities received multiple calls about a man who was disturbing the peace at several businesses in a small town 75 miles southeast of Orlando. The affidavit said the suspect later identified himself as 61-year-old Thomas Devaney Lane was calling himself the Saint and allegedly said his army of turtles would destroy everyone.
I want to see that army so badly.
Well, unless it's the mutant variety, I would imagine you have nothing to fear.
I know, right? Did you just wait?
Lane accompanied a responding officer back to the police headquarters where he pounded on the walls and glass before leaving the station. Police said officers later found him in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven, and nothing ever happens good in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, guys, where he allegedly cursed out customers and called 911. The customers, and they called 911. Lane allegedly told the 911 operator, he's the one that did call 911. He allegedly told the 911 operator that the responding officer needed to leave now or he would be sorry and effed with the wrong saint, the report said.
Wow.
Police said Elaine refused to exit the vehicle and was taken out by force. During the ordeal, Elaine allegedly continued to shout obscenities while warning passerbys about the impending army of turtles. Elaine was arrested, charged with disturbing the peace, resisting arrest without violence, and misusing 911. So hopefully the turtles do not march on this small coastal town anytime soon. I'd hate to see the carnage that they would leave behind.
Is there a patron saint of turtles?
Yes, it's Raphael.
Oh, God, that was good. That was funny. That was really funny. Yeah.
My heavens.
Thought it was Donatello.
So there you go. That is the turtle trampling story for this week. Well, you never know. You just never know about those darn turtles. We got to run a break. We come back. We're going to dive headlong into one of the strangest cases that's actually very new in a lot of ways. It's the Israel Keyes is the guy's name. He's a serial killer, and I had not heard about him until I read Dr. Clarissa Cole's article on her website, The Criminal Code. So a very interesting and fascinating tale. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olsen. And
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
Hey, look at that.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
I had a frog in my throat.
You did.
It was a turtle.
You might have had McConnell. Yep. Who knows? Okay, so we got a great show, a great second half on tap here. A strange, almost modern, more modern than we've generally covered serial killers. So I will step aside.
Well, I will add my wee tiny little weeny teeny bit here, because as we have stated, this is all based on Clarissa's work on the Criminal Code site. You guys got to go check that out. Every Tuesday, more or less, she puts up a new story, usually about serial killers and her analysis thereof. First she tells the tale, then she tells us why, the whys and wherefores. All right, this one is about, as Joel stated, 21st century. It's the career of 21st century modern, quote unquote, serial killer Israel Keyes. Apparently serial killers have heroes. And Israel Keyes, well, he thought Ted Bundy was super cool.
Just a swell guy.
He was a swell guy. But Ted got caught, and Keyes was sure if he was careful enough, he could kill with impunity and avoid that fate. And for a time he did. Dr. Clarissa Cole leads us through the murderous path of Israel Keyes. And once again, it's on her Criminal Code site and obviously on the show tonight. I'll give you just a couple sentences from the beginning of Israel's life. He was born in 1978 in Richmond, Utah. He was homeschooled and eventually moved with his family to Washington State. There he attended church with them and associated with like-minded peers, namely other racists. In fact, it is well known that the Keyes were quite anti-Semitic, which is ironic given that they named their child Israel. And with that note, I will turn it over to Dr. Clarissa Cole.
Well, hello. Tonight we have the write-up on a serial killer that a lot of people don't know about. And I had read about him a while ago and sort of forgotten the story and then came back to it again. He was captured in 2012, but had been active for, quite a while before that. So let's start with Mr. Israel Keyes. He was born in 1978. He was born in Utah, but then his parents moved the family to Washington State not long after that. And they were pretty fundamentalist Christians. Oh, excuse me, had a young coming there. They were pretty fundamentalist Christians, and with their Christianity came a lot of white supremacism, which I don't know if those two things often go hand in hand.
Generally.
But I guess that's just kind of how they rolled. So Keyes was a fairly anti-Semitic, which again, I mean, his first name is Israel. I don't know what is going on there, but he was anti-Semitic. His parents were anti-Semitic, and he was homeschooled. So he's got pretty much no social skills and is a budding racist. And when they moved to Washington, he became friends with two kids named Chevy and Shane.
Chevy.
Yes, he was named after the car, if it gives you any indication as to what his family may have been like. Chevy and Shane Kehoe, and both of them grew up and were eventually convicted of race-related hate crimes and murder themselves. So those were his two best friends growing up.
Sounds like a great neighborhood.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, where is this in Washington State, and how can I avoid it at all costs? So he grows up, and his two best friends are terrible racists, and then he decides to join the Army. And I wanted to kind of point out that a lot of guys that end up in prison have military careers. Not careers, but time in the military. I mean, that's very, very, very common. And I think a lot of the draw of that is, one, a lot of times they want to get out of the environment that they're in because they have a bad home life. Sometimes they come from abusive homes. And the other reason is generally because they want to kill stuff. And once they get...
Well, there you go. That's the right place to do it.
I want veins in my teeth.
Yep. They want to kill stuff. They want, they want to learn how to use all those weapons. But then, of course, when they get to the military, they realize how structured and rule bound it really is. And so the vast majority of the criminals that I see that joined the service flunked out. Basically, they were dishonorably discharged. I mean, by and large, 75% or more are dishonorably discharged. Many of them have
washed out.
Time spent in the brig as well. Charged in military court martials, the whole thing, because they're not used to following rules. And what do you get when you get to the military?
Nothing
rules.
But more rules.
Lots and lots of rules. So Keyes was a little bit different in that he went and joined the Army in 1998 when he was about 20. And he served on a mortar team. He attained the rank of specialist, and he left after only a few years. But he was honorably discharged, and he actually got a few awards as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is it's exceedingly rare for the average person with a criminal background. And he also didn't have a juvenile history that we know of crime. Okay, so basically, it seems like, I mean, other than the racist stuff, which scary enough, he doesn't really have crime in his background. He's not from an abusive household. I mean, I don't think racist ideation is great, but it's, not patently abusive. And he was successful in the military. So already he's starting off life pretty differently than the majority of people that you'll see profiled on my website. So
gotcha.
By 2007, Keyes had declared himself an atheist, kind of departure from his family of origin, and he moved to Alaska. And once in Alaska, he started a thriving construction business where he worked as a handyman, a contractor, general laborer. And it was from this base in Alaska that Keyes traveled out to nearly every region of the United States to commit his murders.
So he
and
would
all
use
of them were planned.
jobs? He'd be on a job? Like a construction job?
No. Never. He only did construction jobs local to Alaska. He took time off from work and went on murder vacations.
Oh.
So do we have any idea? I mean, it's kind of a big jump there, from his background.
Just to
and
start
his relatively successful military career and his relatively successful business to planning and executing murders all over the nation. What happened there? Do we know? Do we have any idea what triggered all this?
Well, he was always fascinated with Ted Bundy. That was, from his youngest years, he was always fascinated with Ted Bundy and killers in general. He, like many people who end up committing murder, he had more than just a passing fascination with other murders. Now, a lot of people are interested in true crime. There are even true crime groupies, but this went far beyond that. He looked up to Ted Bundy, idolized Ted Bundy, as it were, and thought to himself that he wanted to be like Ted Bundy, but better. So that was sort of a consistent for him, but it wasn't something that people knew about, and he didn't commit crimes. So was there anything sort of leading up to this other than the very aberrant thoughts in his head? No. He, as all accounts have it, that he lived a fairly normal life. He always kept to himself. Yeah. Even in the military, he kept to himself. People said that he was kind of a loner. He wasn't mean to people. He didn't abuse people. He wasn't violent. He did drink a lot on weekends and things, they said. But I'm like, okay, what young guy in the Army doesn't? It's pretty rare if they don't. Yeah. So it's not like it's outside the norm. They just said that he wasn't super social, but he wasn't somebody that people didn't like. Nobody could point to something about him where they're like, oh, yeah, everybody hated that guy. Yeah. He wasn't that guy. People didn't dislike him.
He was just very introverted, kept to himself, that kind of guy.
That's how they thought of him. They thought of him as being introverted, not like angry or like Dennis Nilsen was in the military, and he was also in the police service. But people described him as being not just a loner, but kind of creepy as well.
Gotcha.
This guy, not so much.
Well, judging by his pictures, he didn't look overly creepy.
No, he doesn't. And there are pictures of him partying with friends where he looks downright normal, where he's at barbecues. Supposedly he does actually have a child. I don't know if it's a girl or a boy, but he had a relationship with a woman that produced a child. I mean, he wasn't outside of the norm. He moved to Alaska, started this construction business, and then started taking these trips across the country. And my guess is that he moved to Alaska not because he just loved the cold weather, but because he wanted to live underneath the radar.
Yeah, I've heard that
a lot
before.
of people go.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Alaska's a great place to get lost. You know,
Yes.
so no one can find you. And that would make sense, especially him doing that activity in the lower 48 would give him many, many miles of separation.
Right. And if you're going to kind of be an outlaw, be a little bit weird, you want to go to some place where people aren't going to ask you too many questions. And Alaska is one of those places, right? So he's up there in Alaska, and there are no complaints about him on the job in Alaska, you know, because that could also be another situation where maybe he treated women wrong or something on the job. There were, as far as I know, there weren't complaints about him. He was just a normal guy who went on these trips, and nobody really questioned that because he had his own business. He wasn't really beholden to anybody. He would just go on these trips. So when he went on these trips, now this is of just spectacular interest to me because we've talked about it on the air multiple times. You guys have asked me myself, what would I do if I wanted to be a serial killer these days and not get caught, right? Because of the advancements in forensic science and just the general knowledge of the public. Like, how could you get away with it? Well, Israel Keyes is my answer. This is how. What he did. It is.
Well, what did he do?
Truly crazy. So he took these little sprees, right, where he would take a plane somewhere, because obviously Alaska separated from the contiguous, 48 by quite a ways. So he would take a plane, let's say, to Chicago, fly into O'Hare, and then he would rent a car. Now, all of this is going to be on record, right, that he took the plane, because that's all recorded under your name, and that he rented a car. But once he got that rental car, lots of rental cars come with like the unlimited mileage, right?
Yeah.
They don't track where you go. So he would get this rental car and then drive sometimes up to 1,000 miles away and pay for his gas with only cash, pay for cheap motels with just cash, pay for all of his meals with cash. So there is no record of him not stopping at ATMs. Yeah, there's zero record that he went anywhere except Chicago, where he rented the car. Right, that's where all the digital trace is. But then he drops off the map. He drives, let's say, 1,000 miles away, finds an idyllic little town, let's say, and then he sees a set of victims that he thinks he might want to kill. Now, this is important. There is no connection between himself and the town of any kind. That's why, Joel, when you were saying, did he have jobs there? No, because that would mean there was a connection.
Sure.
There has to be no connection. He would drive to some random town that wasn't necessarily planned out and choose victims, and he would choose them very carefully. So, for instance, on one of these trips, he flew into Chicago. He drove 1,000 miles to Vermont, I believe it was. Was it Vermont? And once he got there, he picked out a couple, the Couriers, Bill and Lorraine Courier, and decided that they would be good victims for him because they lived in a house that had an attached garage that was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, no kids, no dogs, a good couple that he figured he could murder fairly easily. But instead of murdering them then, he decided to take his murder kit that he brings with him and bury it near their house. Just so that when he comes back, it's available.
How would he remember where he buried it, though? I mean, that's awfully... He must have had either a great memory or a way of geocaching it to know where it was. I mean, what was that? Well, how did he do it?
My guess is that it was all analog. I'm guessing he didn't keep anything on a digital device that could be hacked in any way. I'm guessing he kept actual paper maps and wrote down locations. And he did seem to have a very good memory of where these things were. And so in the Courier's case, that's exactly what he did. He buried this murder kit and he left it there for 2 years.
Wow.
And then he came back 2 years later, dug it up, broke into their house, tied them up, took them to another location of an abandoned home that he had scoped out, killed Bill with the gun that he had put in the murder kit, raped Lorraine and strangled her, and then got rid of their bodies, and then reburied the used murder kit in a different town in Parisville, New York, and then never came back to the area again.
Wow.
Well, he was disciplined at this point anyway, wasn't he?
At this point, yes.
Meticulous even.
Extremely meticulous. So bringing the murder kit with him. I'm not sure how the murder kits, I don't know that detail, like how the murder kits got with him. I'm sure that certain things he could have transported on the plane and carry on luggage if it was just like rope or tape or flashlights, that sort of thing. Other things he could have purchased in cash along the way. As long as he wasn't purchasing everything at once and he was purchasing things in cash, he could build up that murder kit all along the way to whatever location he chose.
One stop to Lowe's and you can get everything you need.
You don't want to buy everything at once if someone finds it.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, you'd have to piecemeal it.
Yeah.
I'm sure he piecemealed it together. He seemed meticulous in every other way. I don't see why he wouldn't be. And then he would bury it somewhere, leave himself a map, and then potentially come back to the area. Sometimes he never returned if he thought it wasn't safe. But he had murder kits buried all over the country.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, they found at least 5 of them, and there are thought to be many more. And he would bury these murder kits and then, again, rebury or, try to get rid of them in some other way after they were used. So he wasn't so much worried about DNA transfer, which is what everybody else is concerned about.
Yeah.
What he was concerned about, which is very intelligent on his part, is link between himself and the victims, because where does everybody start when they're looking at victimology?
Sure.
Where
who do they know?
The link?
Yeah.
Who do they know?
Why they killed?
Who's close to them? Who's in this area? Who has reason to travel through this area? He picked areas that he never had reason to travel through, and he paid all in cash. So
there was no connection. There was nothing for them to go on.
Zero. Absolutely.
So
nothing.
He could have lived this way for years.
And he did. He did. He admitted to at least 8 murders. The FBI believes it's at least as high as 12, if not many more than that. And that, and that's them not saying like, well, maybe. That's them saying we're reasonably certain that the number's above 8. Like, it's credible. His confessions are credible. And when he directed them to the other murder kits that he had buried across the U.S., they were there.
So this guy would take and put these kits together, find find someone that he thought he wanted to kill, or people, or what have you, bury them, these kits, sometimes leaving them for years underground, remembering where these kits are exactly, digging them up, and then using them. That's almost very close to being a mad genius.
It like, I thought about numerous times now since I was writing up this article. I was thinking about being one of the couriers, and him scoping them out when they were maybe taking a walk in the afternoon, something like that, looking at their house, looking to see if they had animals, looking to see if they had children, and then realizing, the investigators realizing that he buried a murder kit that he was going to use to murder them on their property. And it was sitting there for 2 years while they just lived their lives.
And nobody ever found the kit or anything.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Man.
That's about as creepy as I can possibly
think of.
That's
cold.
That is so beyond.
Do we have any? I imagine it's premature because you'll get to it when you do your profile and analysis. But why did he want to kill all these people?
Because he was a psychopath, is my guess.
Fun? I don't know.
Because he liked it. Yeah. That way, honestly, that was the upshot of the FBI agent that profiled him when they asked her what was his motive, and basically she thought for a really long time and said he enjoyed it.
God,
that was his motive. And when you talk to and that's the thing. Ted Bundy had much longer on this earth than Mr. Keyes did. Not to ruin it, but Mr. Keyes is no longer with us, and Ted Bundy described, they talked to him, officials talked to him for many years about sort of his experiences, and not unlike other serial killers, Ted Bundy and BTK. They talk about the rush that comes from killing, and in Ted Bundy's case and Mr. Keyes' case, sexual assault. They talk about the rush that comes from that, not being close to. And not anywhere near anything else.
And he would never kill anyone near each other, it seems. They're many, many miles apart, so there was no way these different police departments could link it and create a chain of murders.
Well, and even if, I mean, that's the other thing. Like Ted Bundy did the same thing. Now, Ted Bundy killed in many different cities, mostly just because he moved around, right? Not because he was planning it that way, just because he moved around. And what Keyes was doing was not only making them geographically distant, but also, he thought this part out. See, Ted Bundy partially got caught because his victims were all the same. Just like the Son of Sam, he had a type. You know, he had like Son of Sam had brunettes, I think it was, or blonde. I can't remember which one. And Ted Bundy always had brunettes with hair parted down the middle, around 5'3", 5'4". Like they had very specific types that they liked.
Yeah.
Keyes made sure to vary his victim type.
Men, women, didn't matter.
Greatly. Yep. Yes. And that is the primary reason, I think, to vary the MO of how he killed them. That's the primary reason that he was not caught, is not just because they geographically were far apart. I mean, those details get entered into the national data bank with the FBI. The MO and the victim need to be similar for them to link them, and he made sure they weren't.
He knew all this. How would he know all this, though?
Just like I do. You study it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't know it. I don't know it because I do it. I know it because I study it, and it's my job to sort of know those things, just like it is for any criminology student, for anybody involved in forensics, anybody in law enforcement. I mean, he was just studying it to see, you know, like when you guys have asked me, what would you do to get away with it? This would be my answer. Plan ahead. Don't leave a trail. Pick victims that are not linked to you, not linked to your hometown, not linked to each other, and that aren't the same. There you go.
Randomize them.
Absolutely as random as possible. And if you get made anywhere, or you think that somebody may recognize you, you think you may be caught on camera, don't do anything. Even if you have somebody picked out, even if you have the perfect setup, leave. I mean, that way you don't get caught. And it seems like that is what Keyes did. He had several trips where, you know, a lot of his trips were just preparatory trips, like this trip that he made the first time to Vermont. He just buried the kit. He didn't harm anyone while he was there. He went there to pick victims and bury the kit, not to do something while he was there. Just to prepare. So he had multiple preparatory. Yeah, he had multiple preparatory trips where he didn't feel comfortable committing the crime just yet because he wanted the entire trip to sort of pan out first.
But how would he know? I mean, you know, how do you know these people don't move in 2 years? You see what I'm saying?
He doesn't. That's,
you know, and that's the chance.
But isn't that part of the rush, though, for someone like this? Think about it.
Yeah.
That's got to be the buildup, right? When he's on the plane to Chicago, when he's on that 1,000-mile drive in the middle of the night, paying with everything by cash, do they still live there? Do I still have a shot? Did they get a dog between now and then? Because he wouldn't strike at houses with dogs or children.
Yeah.
So
singles and single couples with no animals and no children.
Singles and no animals, no children, nothing that would sort of, because, you know, animals bark. Children could see things, and it didn't seem like he was necessarily fond of killing children. I don't know if that was a hard line for him or not, but you know, children are also unruly and tend to get away quick. So
yeah, and he only wanted. Well, it sounds like he wanted his targets. He's very targeted. So it was like a big game hunter tracking an animal.
Yes, he modeled his entire life around killing humans, and did it very successfully. He did it successfully for many years. The FBI knows for a fact that he made over 35 trips into the contiguous U.S.
Wow.
That no one knows where he was during that time. It's not like he was visiting people or anything like that. He made at least 35 trips where he just
go on vacation,
disappeared for a few days. Yep. Where he would rent a car in whatever city he flew into, but then he would just disappear off the map for days.
Damn. That
so there's 35 that they know of. Not that there are 35 victims, because as we know, some of those trips were preparatory. But if as much as half of the trips were preparatory, that's still a really scary number.
That is a lot of. That's a lot.
What's the time frame? I know he. Well, I don't want to get ahead. When did this begin? The murders?
Well, we don't know for sure. We know that he moved to Alaska in 2007.
Okay.
So I would dare say it was probably not long after that. Is my guess. Probably 2007, 2008.
Wow. Man, very, very, very gruesome stuff so far. We got to get out of here, go to break. We come back. We're going to talk about the unraveling of Mr. Keyes and Clarissa's thoughts on what made him tick. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey? Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
No, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. You know, 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
I got a rather serious problem over here.
All right, what are we looking at?
Cranky mother-in-law asleep on the couch in the man cave.
Dear God.
It gets worse.
That's impossible.
She's passed out on the remote.
I stand corrected.
What do I do?
Okay, I want you to grab a Torrin Big Red hydraulic bottle jack.
Okay.
Now you wedge that bad boy in under your mother-in-law and crank her up skyward.
It's working. And got the remote.
Great. Now grab that Torrin Big Red 2-ton folding shop crane and put that woman on wheels.
And away we go.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
First half of the show, or the first half of this hour, we were talking about the serial killer Israel Keyes, and he quite possibly had the perfect murder plan until he didn't. And he got away with several murders in the lower 48 states by A, running to Alaska, and number 2, while renting a car and using all cash. It's a strange case of Israel Keyes. What was his unraveling, though? What was the evil genius's unraveling?
Well, in 2012, Israel Keyes was back home, his chosen home of Anchorage, Alaska, and he was at they called it a coffee booth worker. So it's my guess that she was in one of those sort of like kiosk things, not a brick and mortar store necessarily, but one of those that's more like a kiosk you drive up to. He saw a worker named Samantha Koenig. And he decided that he wanted her. And rather than following his own rules, which are don't do it in your hometown and don't, take somebody from a place where, a more public place, he broke both of those rules. So rather than wait until she got off of work, maybe, and follow her home or something like that, he kidnapped her. He kidnapped her from the coffee booth right then and there.
Why?
I think
follow those rules. Why?
We'll get to that a little bit more in the profile because I have some theories about that. But he took her from the coffee booth, and he was caught on video when he did that. But the video was, like a lot of surveillance videos, wasn't that great. They didn't get his license plate. They couldn't really see who it was. So at that point, they did not know that it was Israel Keyes. They just knew that her name was Samantha Koenig and that she'd been abducted. So a massive search was launched really quickly. I mean, people found out right away that she was missing. But at that point, it was already too late. He had taken her to a shed on his property, raped her, and killed her. So she was in a shed dead on his property within hours of her abduction, which unfortunately is actually very common in abductions. And he left her body in the shed. It was very cold at the time. It was February in Alaska. So, he left her there, and he went and he took a 2-week cruise. And when he returned, he dismembered her body and disposed of her in a nearby lake. And authorities still didn't know. They still didn't know who they were looking for. But he went somewhere else. He had a rental car, and he started using her ATM, her debit card at ATMs.
To make it look like she had run away?
potentially, because her body had not been found yet. So there is this idea that maybe she could be somewhere else. And we do know that he did steal a lot. He had very sticky fingers. He did use other people's ATM cards. He needed money, obviously, because his construction company was doing okay, but it wasn't doing awesome because clearly he's taking a lot of trips. So he's getting money from elsewhere. So he did use other victims' ATM cards. But his third, I guess at this point, mistake was that he went to an ATM where his car was photographed. The rental car, the rental car's license plate was captured. So at this point, authorities see this image. They call the rental company. The rental company says, this is who it's rented to. So they know now. They know for a fact that Israel Keyes is using Samantha Koenig's ATM card. They don't know that he killed her necessarily, but they do know that he's using her ATM card and that she had it on her, supposedly, when she was abducted. So the card pinged in New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas, where the cops finally caught up with him, and he was arrested on March 16th, 2012 in Loughlin, Texas.
Wow. So they caught him because he broke every single one of his own rules.
He broke a lot of them.
Every one of them, pretty much.
He suddenly threw caution to the wind.
Yeah.
I wonder. Well, I guess I know you're going to get to this. I'm chomping at the bit. I'm restraining myself from tossing out theories here.
No. I mean, we're pretty much kind of at the end of this because his life was not much longer than this. As soon as he got arrested, of course, the FBI comes in and they question him for 40 hours on and off. And of course, as every guilty party, he is asleep when they walk into the interview room. I don't know what it is about guilt and sleep, man, but they seem to go hand in hand. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Seriously, if a suspect is sleeping, he's either narcoleptic or guilty. So anyway, he was sleeping. They walk in. I've watched big portions of his interviews. You can find them on YouTube. They're not terribly interesting, to be honest. He's quite the boring suspect, in my opinion. Well, at this point, there's so many, they all kind of start to blend together and sound alike. So he's just given the same legal runaround that every other guilty person gives, which is, like, well, I haven't been told what I've been charged with, and I need my blah, 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 on and on. Anyway, he tells them about certain crimes that he is reasonably certain that they already know about. And then he goes back to his cell as he's awaiting trial, and he killed himself.
Oh,
so
damn.
He is dead.
So,
yeah, he slit what did he do? He slit his wrists and hung himself, and he did leave a suicide note that was called "Ode to Murder."
Oh my!
Wow. So
it was, I guess, a poem about the joys of killing people. It has not been released.
He actually robbed society of their justice, is what he did, at least in his own mind, I'm sure, by killing himself. Like the ultimate, haha, you're never going to get me because I'll do it myself.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely right. It was the ultimate sort of F you.
Yeah.
Especially leaving a poem about murder. Yeah. To the end, he was absolutely unrepentant and was very proud of himself. Apparently.
So what makes him tick?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to sort of in the profile is that clearly, is he a psychopath? Yes. Very little doubt about that. I mean, he clearly had no empathy for anyone. Very narcissistic, driven by this urge to kill because it's the biggest high. It's probably one of the only feelings he ever really had was this sort of anticipation. That's really what makes him tick as far as why he did what he did. I wish I could say that there was a more involved answer. People always want one, but until you've spent, oh God, I don't even want to know how many thousands of hours it is now of my life with people that do this, you'll realize that the answers aren't deep. I hate to tell you.
How do you think he knew in advance that he would get that kind of a thrill out of it? How did he know that that's something he wanted to do?
A lot of them do. A lot of them know somewhat young, and my guess is that we're not getting the full story of his childhood, either because his parents don't want to talk about it, or maybe because they're denying it, right? But the vast majority of them kill smaller things as they ramp up to killing humans. So My guess is that he killed any man, number, and I'm not talking in a hunting capacity. Obviously, that's not the same thing. And not even in that, how a lot of kids like take magnifying glasses to ants sort of a thing when they're little.
Yep.
No, it doesn't mean they're going to be a psychopath. Okay. Lots of kids do things like that, or even take the wings off of flies out of curiosity. I mean, that's kind of a normal kid thing. But when you keep doing it past the age of, 6, 7, 8, and the creatures that you're doing it to are more and more what we might consider sentient, like cats and dogs, then you might have a problem on your hands. And you want to get a hold of somebody that does what I do, like sooner rather than later. Because if all they're feeling is curiosity when they're, say, putting a live cat in the oven, we should talk.
Wow, in the oven. God, that's cruel.
That's nothing.
Man.
That's honestly nothing compared to what I hear on a fairly regular basis. Putting a cat in the oven, I'm like, maybe the gas killed it right away. That's actually merciful.
Microwave would be worse, I would imagine.
I've heard much worse. I've heard much worse done to children as well.
Oh my God!
From just curiosity standpoint. God, I think I can share one potentially that non-identifying put a child in a trunk, and put a hairdryer and a space heater on the trunk to see how long it would take the child to succumb to the heat.
Oh my good Lord. Heinous.
Well,
and that was
just purely sadistic. I mean, it's just absolutely sadistic. When you're saying it's not even that, it's something even weirder than that.
It is kind of weirder than that because at this point, they're not necessarily doing it for the sadistic value of causing the pain and getting thrill out of it. That's often secondary. So I think they start off sort of that curiosity. What is life? What is death?
Experimenting.
Right? Yeah, they're experimenting. But then as it goes on and the more sentient the creature becomes, the more they struggle, the more pain they realize they're inflicting. And they usually will get a rush out of that. And what is kind of awful is that a lot of times this experimenting often coincides with them coming of age sexually. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this experimentation with life, death, pain gets fused with things like masturbation and sexual fantasy. So you put those things together and you've got a pretty rancid soup for what could eventually come out of it. So my guess is that is what happened with Keyes as well, is that, I mean, we knew his friends were turned into murderers later in life, the anti-Semitic murderers, the Kehoe brothers. And my guess is that they were experimenting with all number of animals while at the same time objectifying women and people. So
there's not a whole lot of psychological background on this guy, is what you're saying.
There isn't
like
a lot
as
of
kid.
No, there's not a lot available on him, but given what I know of others, that is my best guess, and I would be shocked to hear anything different. They all experiment. It is almost always fused with some sort of sexual experimentation as well. So a sexual thrill gets paired with killing and pain, and that just intensifies as they get older, and their targets become bigger and more advanced to the point to where they're humans. And since he also sexually assaulted his female victims, I have no doubt this was the case. I mean, I'm guessing he probably had trouble becoming aroused to anything that we would consider normative.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what I was just thinking too, backing up slightly. He was so enamored of murder that he even murdered himself.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I think it's a line in your story, but it's even actually broader than it at first glance. His entire life was in the service of murder, even to the point of killing himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder if he got a charge out of killing himself. He probably thought it was hilarious.
I actually think he probably did, and I really do. I've also met these people who have survived really egregious attempts like this. I've spoken to them after the fact, and they laugh the entire time. They think it's funny that people had to rush to save their lives, that they got blood all over the people that were trying to save their lives. You should have seen their faces. They were so scared. They were so panicked.
Damn.
Yeah, but you were the one that was dying. Didn't that affect you? It doesn't. It doesn't.
They could
even
care
make
less.
it in.
Even their own life has no value to them.
They laughing hysterically, going, you should have seen even to me, you should have seen your face when you walked in here. You look like you saw a ghost. All that blood. Oh, my God. Laughing hysterically. And the person that I'm talking about had 37 stitches from the bottom of his wrist all the way up his arm. 37.
Wow.
Lost a third of his blood.
Good God.
Thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever done.
I'm surprised you just didn't let him die, to be honest.
That's not our jobs.
We're
not. We don't play God. We try to preserve life here. But yeah,
until the governor says otherwise.
Exactly right.
So this is a fascinating tale, and you have presented it extremely well as always. So now the crux of the matter is the undiscussed element here, and you said you even had some theories, is why did he violate his own rules that were so successful, enabling him to have this career? What happened that made him do that, or made him think it was okay to do that? My first thought, and this is just purely me hearing the story, so please do, I'm happy to, eager to hear what you think about it, is that it was actually quite a strain for him to be restrained, to be that meticulous, to plan all this out, that it took a lot of effort, and that eventually he either talked himself out of having to do it. Hey, look at all the stuff I'm getting away with. It's not just because of the planning. It's because I rule.
Yeah, I'm that cutting.
The ultimate murderer. Yeah. It's either that, that he literally talked himself, into that he didn't have to worry about it, or he just didn't care anymore. So I think, my theory would be it was just too much effort to continue on. And he got to a point where it just wasn't worth it. So, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and, any input on, because what a strange, fascinating, peculiar person. And, it really is a cautionary tale. It doesn't matter where you are, what the environment is. It is possible that some literal random individual might be out to harm you. So I don't want people to run around being paranoid, and I get accused of being naive actually pretty often, kind of the opposite of paranoid. But I always have a little bit, I'm looking around everywhere I go. I always assess the situation, even if it's subconsciously, and I look for the doors. Every situation, you should at least have an inkling of what you would do if all hell broke loose or if you were attacked.
I totally agree. The odds of something like this happening to anyone is extraordinarily low, but always having an exit plan, I think, is very important. But I do think that your theory, Eric, is about him is right on. There is not that he didn't care. Because he clearly did care when he got caught. You know what I mean? If you guys watch any of the YouTube videos, you'll see what I'm saying. Like, he's trying to get out of the charges
because he wants to kill again. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So he does still care, but I think what the other part that you were saying, Eric, the idea that I rock, I am invincible, no one has ever even been close to being onto me. In fact, he disposed of the body so well that people still haven't found the couriers, and they only found Samantha's body because he helped them. Mm-hmm. So he's probably thinking at that point in Anchorage, he sees Samantha, he likes her, he's having that urge again, he wants to fulfill that urge again. But dang it, she's in my hometown. I really shouldn't. You know what? I could get away with this. I've always gotten away with this. And so he does it. And then he goes on a 2-week cruise because I am unconcerned.
Because before he was a ghost.
Exactly. And so, it's this idea that after a while, after you've done it so many, and plus, I think, and he's not around to ask, but I think it may have actually sort of upped the thrill for him a little bit to do it in his backyard because
violate the rules.
Because then he gets to see the fallout too, where he doesn't in the other locations. I mean, sure, you could look on the internet, but you don't want to do that. You'll have a search history, right? You can't really just flip on the news and see how the couriers are missing. You're not from that area. But when you do live there, you can relive that moment you took her and raped her and killed her every time you see a news broadcast or a flyer.
Did they find any trophies in his home that's so often associated with serial killers?
If they did, I did not see that in the reports. I would be surprised if he kept trophies. He seemed smarter than that. I don't think so. I think his trophies were just his memories.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And a lot of them are, kind of memories of things like that. But I think it probably upped the adrenaline for him a little bit to break the rule of doing it in his hometown. But I think the biggest thing is that, and then that to me was the irony of this entire case, is that Keyes idolized Ted Bundy, right? Mm-hmm. But Ted Bundy got caught because he got overproud and started to think that he was invulnerable, which is the exact same reason that Keyes got caught.
Yeah. Followed in the footsteps of his idol to almost a T.
He really did.
I wonder if he thought that he could escape like Bundy did, even if he did get caught.
I wouldn't doubt it. He really, I think, thought through, though, all of Ted Bundy's mistakes, and I think that he thought that he was doing everything perfectly, and he really was. It wasn't until he did break his own rules that he got tripped up. Which is, Ted Bundy was busted driving around with a broken taillight around the town that he lived in at the time with a murder kit in the front seat spread out in pre-dawn hours of the morning in a residential area. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's going to make him a little suspicious.
I mean, come on, dude. Like, it was the most egregious arrest I think I've ever seen, other than standing there with a machete poised over someone's head. It's pretty, it was pretty egregious, but Keyes was arrested sort of in the same way. He was in a rental car and using cash, but then he stopped at an ATM with the victim's card, and the license plate was photographed, and he'd always been too careful for that to happen in the past. So he broke his own rules, got overproud.
Maybe he wanted to get caught, though, Clarissa. Maybe a small part of him wanted this to get caught. Maybe he wanted that notoriety.
I was going to say, I was like, that's like my favorite thing that people say to me ever. Maybe they wanted to get caught, and I'm always like, okay, you go ahead with your mad theories. No, they don't. But you don't ever want to get caught.
Maybe who would ever know your work, and who would ever admire your work?
He was a good writer. He could have left a manifesto when he was 80 years old, and I think he would have been perfectly happy with that. I do not think he wanted to get caught. I don't, especially not by people in Loughlin, Texas. I would. Think no. And I'm sorry, there's nothing wrong with Loughlin, Texas. It's just, it wasn't like an FBI SWAT team or something, which is, I'm sure, if he was going to go down, how he would want to go down.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was grandiose as heck.
I would imagine.
There's no way he wanted to, stop the way he was.
He would really rather go down a hail of bullets than a...
Exactly.
Yeah.
With SWAT teams wearing full riot gear. The fact that, just some random cops in Loughlin, Texas picked him up after using an ATM card, the most anticlimactic pickup ever.
Yeah.
It's like Al Capone getting nailed for tax evasion.
See? Exactly. And it's always the quiet things that get you. It just is.
Now that we thoroughly taught people how to get away with murder.
Yeah, my lord.
Randomize them, take long trips. Yeah, you keep doing that, you'll be golden. Just don't do it in your own backyard.
But this is what I see. I was kind of getting the same heebie-jeebies when I was writing this article. Oh no. I'm giving a playbook here, and this is terrifying, and what can we do to avoid it? And I realized, though, that all of the most prominent serial killers in history, H.H. Holmes, BTK, Ted Bundy, oh my God, the list goes on and on and on, were all captured due to their own narcissism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anybody else that has these notions in mind and has the personality, let's say, to do it, they'll get caught up in their own web. I promise.
Yeah, the only one that wasn't was Gacy, and that was because of stench. He had nowhere better to put bodies.
And would Gacy have eventually, of course, he buried in his own yard
Isn't that
and chose
insane?
victims that had a connection to him. Of course, he would have been caught for the same reasons. Like
Yep.
they all are. They all become a little too big for their britches at some point and cross the wrong threshold, and they always get caught. So it's always the narcissism in the end. I would say the only one that didn't was the Zodiac.
Yeah, he's
And
still out there. He looks like
and
the
I really,
yeah.
I really think that that's just due to our inability to crack ciphers is really the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, Zodiac is the archetype, isn't he? The one that got away, the one that'll probably never be caught.
I think that people have a reasonable idea of who he is at this point, at least out here.
Yeah.
And the cipher has been cracked to a certain
Whenever
point.
I see his picture with the bag over his head, I always think it's the unknown comic killing people.
Yeah,
How was Jeffrey Dahmer caught?
Similar. Jeffrey Dahmer was like first stench related, and he had a victim get away at one point. But then he talked the police out of taking the kid in.
Yeah.
I can't remember how was he eventually brought in. I know neighbors reported him multiple times, but Jeffrey Dahmer was also mentally ill, as was Ed Gein. So
yeah. Well, yeah, that was different
they're
circumstances.
not in the same category because Jeffrey Dahmer did feel bad.
He was
did
not
actually,
an evil genius.
No, he was not. And in fact, I don't even know how high he was on the psychopath scale. To be honest with you, he was mentally ill, as was Ed Gein. I when they were mentally healthy and medicated, I don't know that either of them would have killed anyone.
Okay, what do you do when you meet someone that has been a killer and then once they're medicated, they become everyday average Joes? Do you feel bad for them in some respects and their victims? Like, wow, what a bad circumstance.
Oh, of course. I treated multiple people like that when I worked at the state hospital. I saw them as the people that they were. Am I still abhorred by what they did? Of course. Do I still feel horrible for the victims and their families? Of course I do. But was I able to feel empathy for them as well? God, yes. I mean, they were some of the patients that I had the softest spots for, because they were a lot of them were constantly sort of on and off suicidal, because in their more lucid moments, they realized what they had done
it was kind
when
of
they
waking
were
up
unmedicated. And to watch them go through that grief a lot, constantly, consistently was heartbreaking, because they also felt that grief for the victim and oftentimes knew the victim. There was often a personal relationship. No, it was, of course I feel for those people. I think that's a terrible circumstance.
Is that more often than we realize?
No, I would say no. The vast majority of people that are mentally ill are not violent. It really
no,
is
I'm
only
saying
about
killers,
1%.
not mentally ill, but killers that have a mental illness component.
Oh, no, it is not. It is not more often than we realize. It's actually less often than you think. So if you're thinking that a lot of guys like, well, maybe he had a mental illness. No.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to give him out here. I'm just kind of curious of whether or not mental illness plays a part in any kind of measurable cases that you've come across.
Killers?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. I would say that Dahmer and Gein are actually really the outliers. It's extraordinarily rare that a severe mental illness plays any part at all. Even though some of them suffer depression or anxiety or whatever, did that have any part in the killings? No.
Gotcha. It was not a related factor to the killings.
No. It would just happen to be there. But no, I mean, of all the inmates that we talk to on a regular basis that have murder in their background, sometimes multiple murders, there's, only, I'd say 15% of them have any mental health component at all. And I'm not talking about factoring into the murder, just anything at all. The majority are fit as a fiddle.
Very, very scary and interesting all at the same time. Israel Keyes, what a mad genius on one hand and also just an idiot on the other. But either way, he shouldn't have been killing anybody. But he does offer the most plausible way to get away with it if you're willing to live that way, which I am not willing to live that way, and I'm sure no one here is willing to live that way either. But that's the story of Israel Keyes. We got to get out of here. It's been another great edition, so take care of each other, love each other. Tune in tomorrow night to hear Amy Allen from the Dead Files join us. After Hours AM, a production of Midwest Radio Productions. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And please visit www.americas-most-haunted.com.